What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Textbook Junkie here with a review on the new iPad mini. This is the 64 gigabyte version, and I'm going to kind of compare it to the iPad 2, the 64 gigabyte version as well. I chose to compare it to this one because essentially the internals of these two devices are almost identical as far as the memory and the processor, the A5 processor that's being used. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, first off, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the look and feel of these two devices, and then talk a little bit about the dimensions. The new iPad mini really is mini. I mean, it's coming in a height of 7.87 inches, while the iPad 2 is coming in at 9.5 inches. If you look at this thing, very thin, and Apple really touts about being able to hold it in one hand, and that is true. Holding it in one hand is not a problem, although I do have a little bit of trouble trying to type with one hand. It couldn't even reach over there if I wanted to. So that's kind of how that works. Um, Basically, the weight of these two devices, the iPad mini is coming in at 0.69 pounds, while the iPad 2 is coming in at 1.35 pounds, almost double the weight. Again, usually when it's spread out, when the weight is spread out, it really doesn't seem as bad. So you do notice a little bit of difference, but it's really not too bad as far as the weight difference. Let's go ahead and take a look at the screen and the sharpness of these two devices. Now, the iPad mini is coming in at 163 ppi or pixels per inch, while the iPad 2 is coming in at 132 ppi pixels per inch. And the actual screen size real estate of the iPad mini is 7.9 inches, while on the iPad 2 it's 9.7 inches. Again, with this device being so small, I definitely recommend um, having a case with it. It's could very easily fall out of your hand, and then there's three, four, $500 down the drain unless you can get it fixed. Okay, now let's go ahead and just take a look. We talked about both of these devices having the A5 processor chip in them, and both of them running at half a gigabyte of RAM. So let's go ahead and see how that turns into performance or equates into performance here. So let's go ahead and run this live again. And we see 503 megabytes of RAM, 503 megabytes of RAM. This one, the iPad 2 is clocked at 1 gigahertz, and the iPad mini is clocked at 999 megahertz, which is 1 megahertz away from the gigahertz. So let's go ahead and try to run these at the same time here. All right. And what I found that 1 megahertz makes a little bit of difference in the number, and then also in the actual speed of running through processes. Now, as far as surfing and well, actually, surfing is not a good example because this iPad mini claims to have faster Wi-Fi. But as far as scrolling through apps, as far as opening apps and stuff like that, you pretty much see what we just saw there. The screen's opening at about the same time. The iPad 2 is coming in at 760 Geekbench score, and the iPad Mini is coming in at 749 Geekbench score. Okay. Now let's go ahead and just kind of do a little comparison on the sound. The iPad Mini now, for the first time in an iPad, is coming in with stereo speakers. So we have dual speakers at the bottom here. One, two. Okay. And the iPads in the past, and even I believe the fourth generation that's out also still has one speaker. Um, but as far as sound wise, they're really right on par with each other. What it kind of seems like to me is they took the one big speaker, cut it into two, and called it stereo. As far as the sound difference, there really isn't much of one, but it is very loud. It is crisp, but it's pretty much the same as the iPad 2. Maybe a little bit louder, but but not much versus if you had two speakers in the iPad. iPad 2, I think, would be considerably louder. All right, let's go ahead and launch these two. And I had them already open, so let's just see here. And what I'm going to do is, we're just kind of seeing, how they run as far as processor speed, and then again, just also how they're looking. Um, Again, the iPad Mini is a little bit sharper, so we can maybe see that. But let's go ahead and just turn up the volume on the iPad Mini. And again, it's a stereo speaker, so okay. Let's go ahead and turn it down, and then turn up the volume on the iPad 2. Like I said, if not, very close, you really can't tell much of a difference as far as sound. Okay, so that's sound. What I also want to do, since Apple is claiming, that the new iPad Mini and the iPad 4 generation have faster Wi-Fi, I just kind of want to take a look and see if we can kind of tell that difference. And so let's go ahead and open up the App Store here. And then let's go ahead and install this app right here. I may have to put my password in. Maybe not. Hopefully not. Yeah, there we go. All right. So it appears that the iPad 2 is actually winning this race by a long shot. Earlier when I ran it, it was the other way around. The iPad Mini about doubled the time, doubled the speed of the iPad 2. So that's not going to prove to be correct this time. So maybe just so as we saw there, the iPad 2 actually won as far as download speed. Again, when I tried it earlier, the iPad Mini about doubled the speed. So it maybe just fluctuates sometimes. I don't know, but you just have to try it out and see what you think. Um, Next, we're going to just kind of take a quick look. One thing that has came into the iPad Mini, but as most of you probably know, was left out of the iPad 2. It went into the iPad 3 and will be in the iPad 4, and that's Siri. The iPad 2, when it was updated to iOS 6.1 or 6, did not come with Siri. So that's kind of Apple's way of keeping you continually buying their products and upgrading. So let's go ahead and just test out Siri on the iPad Mini. Give me stats for LeBron James.
Here's LeBron James.
Okay, so we see Siri works like it, does on any other device, pretty flawlessly, pretty consistent. Well, some of the time. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some camera and some video shot on each of these devices, just kind of comparing the differences. The iPad Mini front-facing camera is coming in at 1.2 megapixels, and that's what it's able to shoot photos at. It's also shooting 720 HD video coming out of the front camera, so that's pretty nice. The iPad 2 is VGA photos and VGA videos, so a lot lower quality in both in photos and videos on the iPad 2. The iPad Mini rear-facing camera is coming now has 5 megapixels, and it's what Apple calls an eyesight camera. It's a f2.4 aperture, and basically the specs for the iPad 2, it's shooting 920 by 700 by 720 for photos, and that's the rear camera, and it has autofocus, and that's pretty much all Apple described it as. But let's go ahead again and take a look at some photos and some video footage shot on both devices, kind of taken side by side so you can kind of make a comparison for yourself. All right. Okay, so you see, as you can see, you can kind of tell a difference. So now the big question, should you upgrade or should you buy the iPad mini if you have the iPad 2 or if you have the iPad 3 or if you have the iPad 4? Um, well, of course, ultimately the decision is going to be yours, but for me, I do like the iPad mini. It again, it's the smaller form factor. It's you know, the new body design casing, kind of similar to what the iPhone 5 has given us. Um, but again, don't get too caught up with that because again, you're probably going to need to have a case in this thing because if it slips, it's probably gone. So you know, with the case, you don't get too caught up in the look on the outside because you're really not going to see it. Um, Supposedly faster Wi-Fi. In this example, we didn't see it that I showed you, but you know, again, another example that I did, it was almost twice as fast. So I think it just kind of depends. Um, Stereo speaker, yeah, it does have two grills for two speakers, but we see that the sound is pretty much identical also. And then the camera. This one's able to shoot 720p through the front camera, and it is shooting at 5 megapixels on the rear camera. So um, again, you know, you weigh those things, and you know, I think it's a pretty solid buy. One thing I do without a doubt believe is that next year this really will be nice because I guarantee you they're going to put the Retina in it. I guarantee you they're going to put a version of the A6 processor in it, which is double the speed of this processor, and I guarantee you they're probably going to put at least 1 gigabyte of RAM. So if you can hold off, I would definitely hold off. But if not, it's really a nice device. So, um, guys, I just want to thank you for your time, and don't forget to let me try before you buy. And God bless you guys. Take care. But before that, as always, one quick word from our sponsor.